Yes. Okay, that was, so I'm just going to restart this section here where she's going to go do her business. I apologize for that. We're most of the way through. Network hiccup on my end. I'm not quite sure what caused it, but whatever. When Sagrada woke, the sunless sky was an equally pale blue in all directions. Her legs were stiff, and it was clear that nothing she'd eaten had lost any volume in the process of digestion. "Where do people go to do their business?" she asked Sam, reluctant to push him toward a more 21st century mode of speech. If he took comfort from his self-reliant Dickensian persona, she wasn't going to start needling him with cues that might wake memories of contributors whose idea of a hard time had been a weak phone signal or an outdated PlayStation. "I'll show ye." She followed him to a passage that started from an opening in the wall of the square and led to a room shielded from public view. At one end of the room there was a pit, but the odor was actually no worse than that of the weeds. Sagrada had expected the three Adams to shrink down before defecating, to minimize the volume of their waste, but perhaps it had some use at this scale. She positioned her rear beside the pit, and her body's instincts took over. As she was bloating and stepping her way toward the exit, she noticed to her amusement that the walls of the room were densely inscribed with what seemed to be graffiti. No words, but hundreds of crude, scratched sketches. Sagrada supposed they'd been executed with nothing more than a sharp rock gripped between the teeth, which largely excused the lack of artistic merit. She and Mathis had often lamented the fact that most of the worlds they'd visited had public bathrooms segregated by gender. A cryptic graffito, hidden in a riot of other scrawls, would have been the ideal way for them to leave messages for each other. She surveyed the wall, trying not to get distracted by her curiosity about the bulk of its contents. The images didn't strike her as pornographic, but then she had no idea what three-aden sex entailed, if there even was such a thing. She was about to give up when her gaze returned to a scribble she'd passed over earlier. It might have been a meaningless set of scratches. I think my network just died again. No, it didn't. Okay. It might have been a meaningless set of scratches, but if she tidied away its imperfections in her mind's eye, she could almost believe it was a diagram of some kind. 4 lines formed an 8-pointed star, which on its own would have been nothing but an abstract doodle, but there seemed to be annotations. The horizontal line was labeled on the right with a loop that might have been a 0, and 45 degrees anti-clockwise from that, the adjacent line was labeled with a vertical dash that could have been a 1. Then, continuing anti-clockwise, but skipping the vertical line, beside the next point of the star was a hook that resembled a question mark. Sagrada stood contemplating the thing until someone else squeezed into the room, harumphing at her scandalously protracted presence. She departed, and found Sam still waiting for her outside. "I thought you must have fallen in," he joked. "There's something you need to see in there," she said, "and I need the Sam who remembers the moon landing." When the room was free, they went in together. It took Sagrada a while to locate the star again. Sam said, "What is it? Some kind of test?" "I hope so," Sagrada replied. "For an automaton with nobody home, it shouldn't elicit a response at all. For a customer who's steeped in three-adic geometry, who's only here because they know the subject so well, there must be a single perfect answer that makes sense on those terms. And I guess there could be comps who are so immersed in the game that they'd come up with the same reply. But your average lazy customer, or a comp just answering reflexively without thinking, is going to say 3, right?" "Counting around from 0, sure," Sam agreed. "What we need is the answer that none of those people would give. The answer that makes sense to a traveler who knows that this isn't the real world, who isn't trying to show off their three-adic knowledge, but does need to show that they can do more than recite what their contributors learned from Sesame Street." Sam turned toward her, and they spoke in unison. -1. The wall split open, and the 2 stone halves swung away from the room to reveal a long, Euclidean corridor, with a floor of shining linoleum beneath ceiling panels of buzzing fluorescent lights. Sam said, "Indiana Jones, eat your heart out." Sagrada nudged him with her shoulder. "Quick, before it closes." He remained motionless. Sagrada was desperate not to miss her chance, but she wasn't leaving him behind. "Sam, if someone who shouldn't see this comes in, it won't be there anymore." Sam nodded his head and trotted forward, advancing without any need to change size. Sagrada followed him, not looking back even when she heard the stone doors behind them slam closed. Chapter 13. At the end of the corridor was something resembling a department store changing room. It was too small for both of them to enter at once. Sam said, "You first." In the mirror, Sagrada saw her equine incarnation, but once she'd faced it, it declined to keep tracking her movements. She stood for a while, confused, then said, "No." The three-added horse was replaced by the captain. "No." She kept going, winding her way back along a linked list of her former bodies, until she was finally staring at the one she'd woken in for the very first time, dressed in the same coarsely woven tunic. "Yes." A dozen graduated slider controls appeared on the surface of the mirror, labeled with things like age, height, and weight. "There's nothing I need to change," Sagrada said. "Done. Finished. Okay." The controls vanished, and the image changed from a frozen dummy to a reflection of her own body, restored. She stepped out into the corridor. "Captain?" Sam asked, bewildered. "My name's Sagrada," she said. "It's a long story." Sam went in, and emerged as a 20-something version of his midnight incarnation, with the same unruly blonde hair and slightly cleaner, newer versions of the same down-at-heel Victorian clothes. "Now what?" he wondered nervously. Sagrada noticed a side door beside the changing room that hadn't been there before. The cool, slightly tapered cylindrical doorknob felt strange as she gripped it. Her contributors had known this sensation, but in none of the worlds she'd lived in herself had this style been the norm. She opened the door and stepped into a very large room full of rows of people sitting at computer screens. She wasn't sure what to make of the content of the screens, but the vibe was definitely more space probe command center than investment bank. There were men and women of all ages and ethnicities, with clothes of every style and era. As she took another step, a man noticed her and nudged his neighbor. She glanced back and gestured to Sam to follow her. As the two of them walked between the rows of consoles, people began standing and applauding, beaming at the newcomers as if they were returning astronauts. Sagrada froze and found herself trembling with rage. "What about everyone else?" she screamed. "What about all the others?" These comps had found the cracks in Threatica and used them to build this cozy little haven. But if they'd burrowed deep enough into the clockwork monkey's shattered, brightly patterned dress approached. "My name's Miriam. What should I call you?" "Sagrada." "Welcome, Sagrada." Sam had hung back, embarrassed by his companion's outburst, but now he stepped forward and introduced himself. Miriam said, "Everyone you see here is working as hard as they can to bring the others to us, but it's going to take time. When you've settled in and had a chance to recover, maybe you can join us." Sagrada wasn't interested in settling in until she knew exactly what these people were doing with exploits so powerful they could summon this whole mission control room out of thin air without the sludge net even noticing. "I don't understand," she said. "You're safe here. You're invisible. What's the work that's still to be done?" Miriam nodded sadly. "We're safe and we're hidden. But for every traveler we allow in, every comp that vanishes from the games, the sludge net just makes a new one. We could fill this place with 1,000,000 people, and the number of comps stuck in the game worlds wouldn't be diminished at all." You could snatch them away the minute they awoke, Sagrada replied angrily. They'd be born into those places, but they wouldn't have to live in them. And you think that wouldn't be enough to reveal us? Every new comp vanishing as soon as they woke? Our little hidey hole filling up with newborns until it used more resources than all the games combined? Sagrada shook her head. There must be some way. There is, Miriam interjected. But it's not easy, and it's not finished. She gestured at the moonshot crew around her. We're working on better automata that can pass for comps in any game. Guaranteed unconscious, with no elements from any brain map. Glorified chatbots to keep the customers happy, without anyone sentient having to put up with that shit. Sam caught on faster than Sagrada. And you've already filled one world with them. The one we just came from. The one we just came from. Yes, Miriam confirmed. That's a crude version, but the creatures of 3 Attica are so alien that our substitutes haven't raised any flags. They probably ring true to the customers much more than a comp ever could. Sagrada looked out across the room. Some of the people had stopped gawking at the new arrivals and resumed their work. So when you're done, each time the SludgeNet thinks it's minting a new comp from the brain maps, it will really be plucking an automaton from your secret factory? And then everyone can escape without passing the nightmare they're leaving behind onto someone new? Yes. Sagrada started weeping. Miriam put a hand on her shoulder, but when that didn't quieten her, the woman took her in a sisterly embrace. Sagrada broke free and pulled herself together. Of course I'll join you, she said. Of course I'll help if I can. But there's one more thing you need to tell me. What's that? If a comp has been erased not long ago, can you find them in the backups? Miriam looked at her squarely, and Sagrada could see the pain in her eyes. There must have been a time when she longed for the very same thing herself. No, Miriam said. We've tried, but we can't reach the dead. And that was 3 Attica by Greg Egan. The man, the myth, the legend. That, I think, is probably a good story. That and, honestly, is a story trilogy. That one, the one before it, Bit Players, and the last one, or the next one, in this book. I can't remember if there's another follow-up in a later volume. I don't think there is. That triptych, I think, would make a pretty good primer for getting into Greg Egan in general. I'm going to see if he's got any, that's right, he's got another book out since, like, either March or April called Morphotrophic that I've got to get a hold of. Here we go. Where's the supplemental? He's got a supplemental. More technical science notes. Is this it? Jesus. Ball bearings in a hypersphere. Not quite what I'm looking for. Doppler shift triangle law, conic section orbits, double crossing orbits, dihedral angles, ellipse in the atom. General relativity in 2+1 dimensions. Oh, excuse me. I am not seeing anything for Triatica here. Oh my gosh, he's even got... he's got his own primer for actual real-world physics. Bro, how did I not know this? How did I miss this? Good work, dude. Okay, that's incandescence. Diggy, Tyrannesia, Shield's Ladder. Shield's Ladder I want to get around to reading on stream. That one's out there. That one's really out there. I think, what's it called? Not not distress. I think it might be incandescence. Is pretty good for being comprehensible for the most part, even though the perspective of the characters that you're reading from is way out there. Miscellaneous fiction. Let's try that. Let's see if he's got something. Bit players. Beautiful. You champion. You prince among. Oh no, that's just the whole story. Does he have anything at the bottom here? Oh, cool. He's got. This can't be. What? He's got some like random text generator going on here too. This is pretty cool. But it's nonsense. I think it's language. Okay. Now, rate give any that for that mentating cuddling like could be sidenti ble euctais have at. The long guard told. I think it might be. Which hour? Babarate. I don't know what's going on there. I'm not going to keep reading that because I'm going to get a headache. There is. I could have sworn he had one for Triadica. But I'm not seeing it. Anyway, you can get links to all of this on gregegan.net. I'm going to post the link in the chat. I've posted it before. It's well worth checking out. He's got a large number of his short stories on here already. Oops, something went wrong. Of course it did. Why wouldn't it? Anyway, it's gregegan.net. I'm sure people can figure that out. GREGEGAN.net. Sidebar, full screen. Let's try science notes again, see if I just went past it. Anyway, he's a math guy. And now my chat scraper has just died on me, so I'm not going to be able to read any comments. Sorry. Probably happened when the... Oh, no, it's back, I think. Let's try this again. GregEgan.net. That works great. If it doesn't, it looks like it might have worked. Okay, so I can see chat again. I can't see old messages, but c'est la vie. So Greg, if you like, this is gritty stuff. Let's try double crossing orbits. Newtonian orbits. Suppose we pick 2 points, A and B, in the vicinity of massive object O that exerts a Newtonian inverse square gravitational force. If we choose some fixed time t, how many different ways can a test particle, P, move from A to B in that time? That is, how many different ways can we choose the velocity of P when we place it initially at point A, so that it arrives at point B after a time t has elapsed? Or, to put this another way, how many orbits can we find that cross each other at our 2 chosen points after our chosen time? And what follows is math, as you would expect, some of which is actually borderline readable. That's a cool graphic. He's even got graphics that explain this stuff visually. He is a champ. Or she, I don't know. Could be. I have no way of knowing. Anyway, Greg Egan is my hero. This guy's great. This person, whoever they are, is excellent. There's instantiation. I can't find... I can try full screen sitemap and then like do a search for instantiation if he's got a search function built in. He might not. Well, it's a full site map. I can just control F it. Triangle, symmetric waves. Nope, I haven't listed there. That's fine. Anyway, there's much good stuff to be found there, and it's worth checking out. So for next week, I won't be here Wednesday. I got stuff I'm doing. Monday, we will be continuing Starship Troopers. We'll be at the penultimate installment of that. And then Friday, we will be doing whatever the next story in Instantiation is. And then the week after next week, we will, on Wednesday, get in the final story of Instantiation, which is the titular story, Instantiation. So, and then Friday, I guess we'll be getting started, Friday after next Friday, we'll be getting started on Destination Void by one Frank Herbert. So, get hype. We're moving along. See you all later. Have a good one. Stay safe, stay sane, and be decent to each other. Until next time. Bye-bye.